This is reminiscent of when I first started on YouTube. If you guys know me from back in 2000, 2009, 2010, somewhere around there. This is how I used to start the videos, showing all the ingredients. And the reason today we went back to that old format is because I want to run through the ingredients first of all and tell you why we're doing it like this. Yes, chicken liver, chicken hearts. For some of you, not so much. You probably look at this in disgust, but I think personally, in my humble opinion, the utmost respect we can give to an animal is by using just about every part of that animal that gave its life to feed us. That said, it's our tradition in the Caribbean. Very historic, very old school, very cultural. We eat these things, right? And I'm not trying to be ashamed of it, and I'm not trying to apologize for it. Chicken liver, chicken hearts. The hearts will cut in half, and you can see some of the edges still have a bit of fat. That's okay, that will render down and cook out. Chicken liver, same thing. I've cut it up into, well, those cut into half. This is cut into about 1.5 inch pieces. Both of them has been washed with the juice of a lemon and cool water and drained. The reason why we're doing it like this and not seasoning it and marinating it overnight or for a couple hours or something, it is because the hearts take longer to cook than the liver. So instead of individually seasoning them and all that's kind of too much work. So this is what we're gonna do. Hearts, liver, curry powder, onion, Caribbean green seasoning, tomato, Scotch bonnet pepper, a bit of garam masala, garlic. What I have here is some anchar masala. If you don't have anchar masala, some ground roasted cumin. I'm going to finish off with some parsley, but if you have cilantro or shadow benny, you can use that. I'm just going to chop it up. Of course, we're going to need some water. And I have about 2 tablespoons of olive oil heating in my pan. If you want to use vegetable oil, sunflower oil, whatever oil you want to use, you can go ahead and use it. We'll need salt and black pepper. Onion. Garlic, fresh ground black pepper. What I did was I turned on my heat to medium low as well because I'm not trying to burn this. What I want to do is sort of sweat it to allow those flavors from the onion and garlic, as well as the black pepper that we just added to come out and create that lovely base that we need for this wonderful curry. It's been about 3 minutes. I want some garam masala in there, and that is about 3/4 tablespoon. Full list of ingredients with the printable version of this recipe will be available at caribbeanpot.com, as with everything that I share. So head over there, you're gonna find it there. Move that around a bit because I want that to sort of wet fry toast, whatever you want to call it, just for about a minute or two. And then we'll proceed with the curry powder that you decide on using. Now, if you're making this gluten-free, I want you to read the label. If you're not making your own curry powder, read the label of the curry powder that you're using. Sometimes they add a filler in there, and I don't want you all getting caught up with it. That filler being sort of non-gluten friendly, you know what I mean? So read the label. You all know that Caribbean green seasoning has to make an appearance, because if you were seasoning and marinating this overnight, that Caribbean green seasoning would have been part of the equation. What we're doing is seasoning the entire dish, and all we're going to do is add the protein, the 2 components there, to the dish, which already will be fully seasoned. Of course, we need to stir that around, and the Caribbean green seasoning is simply a blend or puree of all the herbs, along with seasoning peppers and garlic and everything. Man, the perfume from that garam masala and the green seasoning, well, I mean to say the onion and garlic and everybody else playing a part, but that is just insanely good, boy. Full recipe over at caribbeanpot.com for the Caribbean green seasoning. I have a full batch and a small batch version, so if you don't use it too often, you can make the small batch version. It's now time for the curry powder, just to make sure that we're waking up all of the spices which makes up that curry powder. And I'm telling you, the kitchen is smelling just spectacular at the moment. This here, ladies and gentlemen, this is pure niceness here. No lie. Uncle Chris don't lie. Nasa. Don't lie, he's a politician. Don't worry about him. What will happen is the curry will go darker. That curry powder, notice how nice and dark it got. It will start clumping together and the onion will be nice and soft. The garlic will start softening up as well. What I encourage you to do now is tune up your heat to medium high just for a minute or so. We want to bring this up to temperature because we need to add some water in here, and that's going to create a sort of a slurry on the bottom that's going to burn off and intensify the curry flavor. Plus, in doing so, we're cooking out the rawness of the curry. And when I say the rawness of the curry is sometimes you eat curry and it has a sort of a gritty, sort of a weird taste or film on your mouth. That is because the curry wasn't cooked out properly. We're not trying to burn it. Do not burn curry. The scent and taste and everything else is very offensive. So when you hear people say we're burning the curry, hit them a slap and move on, because they don't even know what they're talking about. In goes that water I was talking about. We're gonna hit that a stir just to normalize everything. For balance, we're gonna add some acidity with tomato. That's just a small diced tomato that I have. Just gonna move that around, and what that's gonna help to do too is as it cooks, it's gonna melt and help us create a lovely gravy, a nice thick gravy later on. Time for salt. Remember, later on you can adjust that salt. And I'm gonna add a whole Scotch bonnet pepper, a green one. Seeds and everything, because I find with the green one you don't get the intense heat. Now optional, right? If you don't want it overly spicy, you don't have to add this. Now if all you have is a habanero, if you have access to habanero, you know, rock that. Fatali, yo, if you're into ghost and maruga, scorpion and all that, you can do that too. But the point is, I like my curry a bit hot, so I'm getting some heat from that green Scotch bonnet pepper, but it's not as intense as a fully mature Scotch bonnet pepper. I'm just going to let that go for about 5 minutes until all of that water has burnt off, has evaporated, and then we're going to go in with the chicken hearts. You can see we have separation when we pass the spoon in the bottom of the pot here. Yo, one of the things I must recommend, and I highly recommend, well, two things. One, when you're cooking curry, use a heavy iron pot. You get much better results, in my humble opinion. And two, if you want to cut back on the amount of oil, you know, I started off anywhere from 1.5 to 2 tablespoons of that olive oil. But if you want to cut back on, you know, if you're cutting back on the amount of oil in your diet, the amount of fat, there's no problem using a non-stick pan. Yo, it helps, you know what I mean? I'm going to give this one more minute. I want all of the liquid to burn out, and it's going to get just a tad bit thicker, yeah? And then we're going to add the chicken hearts. I have to pause for the cause there, boy. Of course, you want to stir it, and you want that to continue on a sort of a medium-high heat just for about 3 minutes. I just want to sear the hearts just a little bit, and you want to make sure it's properly coated in that curry base that we create. Now, if you recall, at the start of the video, we mentioned that the hearts will take longer to cook than the liver. So at this point, what we need to do is to introduce water into the mix. Yeah, I'm gonna add 1.5 cups of water, bring it up to a boil. That wasn't 1.5 cups, by the way. I have to add some more. That's about 3/4 cups of water I added there. But I'm gonna add in total 1.5 cups of water, bring it up to a boil, and reduce it to a rolling boil, and let it go for about 15 to 20 minutes. It's been about 10 minutes on that rolling boil, and you'll notice quite a bit of liquid still. That is because the hearts will spring up a lot of its own liquid. So be mindful of that. What I also wanted to mention, if you wanted to add other flavor ingredients in here, such as a couple slices of ginger, a stick of cinnamon, maybe a couple bay leaves, that is totally optional, and of course it will add different layers of flavor. It's just that I am not a fan of those 3 things in curry. But if you are, or you want to experiment, by all means go ahead. I'm going to give this another 5 to 10 minutes, and then we'll add the chicken liver to. A slight edit to the recipe. Earlier I said we're going to cook it for 20 minutes. I dislike anything chewy, so I went 25 minutes instead. Yeah, and you can see the water has reduced. It's been going on that rolling boil there for the 25 minutes. At this point is when we're gonna add the liver to the pot. Yeah, I didn't adjust the heat at all. Notice how dry the bottom is getting there. That is where we want, because the liver will also give out a certain amount of liquid as well. The whole idea is to coat the liver without breaking it up. So I'm trying to be very, and if you notice, for the people who just comment about my spoons, I'm using a wooden spoon if all you notice. Alright? So I'm being good today. I'm being a good boy today. Give that a little stir, like so, and just continue cooking it for about 5-6 minutes. I don't want to overcook the liver. Earlier on we spoke about adding the tomato to help with a nice thicker gravy or sauce. Growing up, when mommy would make this for us, yeah, we hated it as well as any other children around the world. We hated liver and gizzard and hearts and everything else, but it wasn't much of a choice, right? You eat or you starve, basically. But anyhow, she would make it a sort of a dry curry, sort of dry masala kind of way. So I am not adding any water, but if you wanted sauce or gravy, because we added a tomato, we sort of, you know, we thought forward, we forward thinking. Add about half a cup of water here, and that's going to help you develop that sauce or gravy if you're eating this with rice. Usually we would have this with rice and dal and cook down pretty much dry. You'll notice the liquid I was talking about that's going to be sprouted. Time for that anchar masala. Mix that in, and just trying to make sure that all of the pieces of liver is fully cooked without overcooking it, because once you overcook that liver, it defeats the purpose of adding it as we did later on in the ceremonies. You know what I mean? You're going to ruin it, and we are trying to ruin that, but I'm still seeing some pink, so I'm going to go to the 7-minute mark. And at that point we can taste it, adjust the salt to our liking, and boom bam, we're done. We are at the 7-minute mark, and I'm, to be honest with you, mommy would go even further with this. I am going to sort of turn off the stove, but before we do, and the reason why mommy would go further is she wants to see the oil that we started off with. What that does, it creates a sort of a caramelization. Yes, caramelization happens. That sort of fond on the bottom there. Yo, it just makes things so much more tasty. Just gonna turn my heat down. I ain't trying to burn it before with all my talking. But anyhow, what we need to do now, if you're using coriander, shadow benny, in my case I'm using parsley, it's time to add that parsley in there, yeah? Taste it for salt. Mix that in, and you're golden. This here is proper things, man. Chris here, CaribbeanPot.com. We just made, yo, it's not the most beautiful thing, and you know, when most people think about chicken, they think about chicken breast and thigh and drumsticks and KFC and all them things like that, but this here is pure traditional thing. This is stuff that we grew up with, and for some reason we're starting to have a disconnection with it. So by myself and others on the YouTube platform and on other forms of social media who are sort of preserving the culture, kudos to us. Yeah, we gotta tap ourselves on the shoulder at some point. Always a pleasure having you all in the kitchen with me. Curry, chicken heart with liver. I hope you get an opportunity to give it a try. It's real nice, man. Remember to taste it for salt too. Adjust that salt before you turn off the stove, alright? And remember, if you wanted gravy, you would have added some water when I mentioned.